Hey loves, it's Britt, and in this video I wanted to talk about Chiron in the natal chart in the sign of Leo. Going back to my Chiron in the sign series, I realize this one is unfinished and I really love talking about Chiron, so I'm excited to talk about Chiron in Leo. So Chiron in the natal chart represents the wounded healer. So it's an area of our life that we have a deep wounding around that is extremely painful and tricky, and there's been suffering. But it's also a big key to our purpose, and it's kind of like our hero's journey. Once we really integrate the Chiron wound, we become like a very high or pure expression of the sign and the house placement and the aspects of Chiron. So it definitely holds keys or codes for our healing mission. So it's super significant. So Chiron in the sign of Leo represents a wound around our creative expression and our basic self-authenticity. So with Chiron and Leo, there is immense creativity, but the wound is around how that creativity is going to be perceived. So quite likely there was some sort of ridicule in early life or even later life or even the whole life around their authentic self-expression. And now there is this difficulty in just being spontaneous, that like the fifth house in Leo energy is like pure authenticity, like purely expressing from the heart, expressing our joy, our love, romance. And now people with Chiron and Leo definitely feel this like block in these areas. So it's very interesting because there's one part of them that does desire to be on a stage and is actually quite a performer. But then there's another part of them that is so serious about expressing that it can actually feel downright terrifying. So they often have a magnetism and kind of that Leo energy that really is charismatic and captivating. And they definitely do really well with an audience on some level. And they naturally kind of attract attention and attract an audience. But yet that is such a source of pain, fear, anxiety, insecurity. They can easily feel very exposed with this placement of Chiron. It's like the need to be seen and yet the absolute disgust, even at times in extreme cases, of being seen. So it's a very tricky one. I mean, they're all tricky. I mean, Chiron everywhere is going to show the wound and the pain, but also the healing of that wound. But with Chiron and Leo, because it is such a shiny placement, it is a position that must be seen and must own the inner light and express the personal creative energy, just totally letting it get out there for all to see, but in a way that is not calculated. They really have to learn to just be in their authenticity and be who they are, and let themselves spontaneously express their art and creativity. But also, as far as romantic relationships go, this can be another issue. You can definitely see these people having, many affairs and being very serious about love relationships and romantic relationships, but also having, kind of all sorts of relationships and persistently attracting heartbreak in some cases, there is lessons or karma around the heart. Maybe there is some sort of past life karma to do with love relationships and romance. And in some cases, women with this, because the sun rules the father, and Chiron and Leo, the sun rules Leo, so their sun sign is actually ruling the Chiron. So the sun is quite a significant planet in the natal chart of all people with Chiron and Leo, but specifically women can encounter heartbreaks to do with men and relationships, and sort of actually both of them can have like father issues with Chiron and Leo. It's not the only placement, of course, that can show father issues or daddy issues, but it's definitely a position that can show a wound with the father as well, and also with children. So this is sometimes more so with Chiron in the fifth house, which I'm not talking about in this video. I do also want to get to all of the houses of Chiron. That's why I want to get through the signs of Chiron, because it's even more fun when we start talking about the houses of Chiron. But yeah, Chiron in the fifth house can show a wound of with children, like sometimes not being able to have them, or some sort of problem with the area of having and raising children. Now, Chiron and Leo can have a similar theme as well, where there is some sort of wound around children. There is a marked seriousness also about having children, but sometimes they feel like it's such a serious undertaking because, their inner child is actually quite wounded and needing healing, that like sometimes they have to tend to that first. And sometimes that takes a really long time and they never actually get to have their own children because they started out with this wounded inner child, and then it takes them so long to just allow themselves to actually express the true self and heal that inner child wound, that then there ends up not being time to have children. Or if they do have children, it's just like they can actually be like some of the best parents as well, because when we get on the other side of this Chiron wound, we can really actually be like fully childlike and, fully living as our inner child, which, makes the best parents. So it's a tricky thing where it's either like this big wound or this absence, or regardless, it's something they take very seriously and do not enter into lightly with Chiron and Leo. But yeah, they can actually be excellent with children. Like if they don't have their own children, they can even end up like working with children. That could be like a part of their career, as well as like actually helping children or helping people connect with their inner child or connect with their artistic abilities, like an art teacher or something like that. Like that's a very like classic kind of example of this. Yeah, so what else do I want to say about this? So the books, and there's some good books on Chiron, they say about how, so like in the early 1940s, there was Chiron conjunct Pluto and Leo. So there's people with Chiron conjunct Pluto and Leo, like famous people like Jimi Hendrix and Janis Joplin. And then I think one of my books says that all three of the Beatles, except not Ringo, all have Chiron and Leo. So I guess because he's the oldest or whatever. Yeah, they all have Chiron and Leo except Ringo or something like that. Now that could be wrong. I didn't like verify that, but like one of my books says that. So, when we think about these musicians from the 1960s, and, also the Pluto and Leo generation is like a whole other thing, and Chiron conjunct Pluto is like a whole other thing. But there is that element of like, their creativity was their career. Like it was their life. Like these musicians, like, and like you could even say that music from that time, it completely changed the entire world forever. Like it was like iconic, that time period, right? And like the Beatles were like larger than life, like one of the biggest bands to ever be, like love them or hate them. Like that's just like one of the facts. Like if you're a music lover like me, or especially I'm like an old music lover, so this is like a big deal. But I really think that it's good the book mentioned that, because it's like, yeah, that is such an archetype of Chiron and Leo, is like, I mean, and maybe they were on the healed side of it, maybe on the inside they weren't. Obviously, some of these musicians struggled with drugs, or most of them did at some point, so they obviously had some deep inner child wounding. but yet they were able to make this art or make this music for everybody that became a healing vessel for everybody to feel, their own truth and their own authenticity and like their own creativity. Like it changed the whole world as as you know they knew it back then. So yeah, just very, very interesting, amazing, creative people with Chiron and Leo. Um, and yet, they can be so childlike, but yet so serious. It's like they can fluctuate between the two extremes. You could see this with people who are like the perpetual adolescent as well, like kind of the Peter Pan energy. If like they're on that side of the Chiron, where it's like the inner child just got stunted and like they never grew up. So it's like there's different manifestations. There's like the overly serious, like inner child that's like completely locked up and doesn't ever get to be expressed. Or there's like the person who never became an adult, right? And then they're just like extremely childish. Or you could even see it as people who are like addicted to fun and partying and lack that seriousness as well. So it's like there's many different manifestations, but there's a wound with the inner child. And like there does need to be some form of like inner child healing. And now every Chiron placement is going to benefit. Like I truly believe every person could benefit from inner child healing. But people with Chiron and Leo, it is like a part of their healing gifts and mission. It's like a part of their purpose to like retain that energy of their inner child and their light source. And like they don't have to try to get attention, right? Like the attention is already on them. So they just have to learn to be comfortable in it and recognize this is a leadership lifetime. This is a lifetime of shining. This isn't a lifetime of like following in the footsteps of someone else. This is like, think of the sun's energy, right? The sun, it doesn't just, follow the rules of anybody else. The sun is the sun and it's going to shine whenever it feels like, right? And like, that's like these people, you can't like subdue yourself with this energy. Like you have to realize that even as nervous as it makes you, because these people can be downright terrified of like actually having attention because of these wounds, but it's like they must do it. And then, you could even see people with this placement becoming like confidence coaches or, helping other people through this same kind of initiation of like hiding yourself to allowing yourself to be in the spotlight. Now, the house is going to show a lot about like where you need to shine and where you need to create. And also where you need to own your truth of who you really are and your fire. Chiron in the fire signs in general can have a wound to do with like obviously the fire element, which can also be to do with like inspiration. And people with a fiery Chiron, it's like they need to connect with that energy of enthusiasm and inspiration, or they can become, more depressed if that energy's stifled. Like they need to connect with the fire element to like regain life and enthusiasm and inspiration. And like they can go through depressed periods where like they haven't been connected to that, or they haven't been connected to themselves, right? And they gotta like have that spark, right? And then when they get their spark, it's like they're unstoppable. Like the whole world sees them, and they truly have strong leadership. And they're very funny. They're very good with children, and like good at creating, and they can create in the moment. It's like this pure energy source, like unlimited creativity, right? Like think about the Beatles and just like how much they created. Like they actually just like have like a lot of music and there's some that have that many albums, but like it never stops. Like the valve of the creativity, once it's open, once it's unlocked, it's on forever. So This is a gift. I think of these people as like the light source, right? When they walk through that pain, they walk through that initiation of their Chiron and they get to the other side, it's like there's no going back. And these are extremely powerful people. Leo is, a sign of leadership, right? So they can end up being in higher positions, although it's different than like a Capricorn kind of leader that can sometimes just continue with the tradition. It's like the Leo leader is actually like the one that's created the whole entire thing. So it's like a little bit different kind of leadership energy where it is primal and it is connecting with like, yeah, the arts and all that flowing sacral sun energy that these people have. Now, we could see on the negative side, there's always going to be a negative manifestation of Chiron, some arrogance here. Because on some level, on some deep level, and they're not wrong about this, but they do know that they're special. And they do know that they have a big mission and purpose. And so in some cases, when this is manifesting like in a way like where maybe the inner child wound is so severe, like you can end up seeing these people being kind of like the tyrants, like they're like, yeah, they're special and you're not, right? Like, okay, so sometimes you will see people with this placement that are like, well, yeah, they definitely have a superiority complex, which, they're not wrong about them being special, right? Like they are special, but everyone is special, right? They're not gods. Okay. And that's going to be more rare, but you can definitely see these people fluctuate between superiority and then inferiority when they do get beaten down by life because life doesn't let them shine in that egotistical way. And then they end up, in failure. And then they're like, what did I do? And then so you can see them fluctuating through that. If they can shine their light in a way, it's like, they don't want to think about that first, like think, oh, I don't want to be too egotistical, so I'm not going to shine. It's not that, but it's like they do need to learn the balance of like, yes, I can shine, but also like when I truly feel confident in myself and I truly feel like I'm seen, right? See, because that's the issue is like they weren't seen as children, but when they can truly recognize like they are seen now, so they don't have to overpower or try to dim anybody else's light or feel jealous of anybody who may also be shining, right? So that's really the key is like rewiring that internal message that like they weren't seen, which can lead to these many different manifestations where either they try to stay hidden because that's what they know or that's what's comfortable, or then they end up being this overbearing kind of like bombastic, like, get out of my way, I'm the one that's the gifted one here. So it's Chiron is funny like that in that you get Chiron and Saturn. You can get some of the most like extreme manifestations of a sign. Like you can get some of the unbalanced like versions of the sign as well. And that's like a part of how like with Chiron in a sign, you've really come to like transmute the energy of that sign. So you can really see like all the potentials of that sign come through in that person. And it's like the lowest angel or the lowest devil or the highest angel, right? And it's really up to your choices and the amount of integrating and healing that wound, right? And with this one, it's inner child stuff. So anyways, I'd love to know your thoughts on Chiron and Leo. What has it been like for you if you have this placement? I'd love to hear it. And thank you for watching this video. Thank you so much, you guys, for being on here, being on my channel. Love you all, and we'll talk soon. Bye.